Welcome back to the Personal Transformation Experience podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of setting priorities and goals as a couple within a committed relationship. First of all, I'm going to define that first. Great article that I came across called How to Set Relationship Goals with Your Partner by Barbara Field. It was published a couple of years ago on the website Very Well Mind. And she said, setting relationship goals is a way to commit to something together and show each other you care about the relationship and one another. So I know that you brought this up, Maureen. You thought it was very important for us to kind of talk about what are our priorities and goals individually, and then how aligned are we as a couple on our individual priorities?
Yeah. It's when I first thought about it, I wasn't thinking about it in the context of setting relationship goals for our relationship, which is interesting because I was thinking more about setting goals for our life in the context of our relationship. So
what's the difference?
Well, in the context, so I kind of pulled back and looked at the bigger picture of our whole life and not just our relationship. But I think after reading this, it makes more sense to set relationship goals instead of goals in your relationship. Does that make sense? Like, when I think in terms of relationship goals, I think about goals for you and me, and how and that are about our relationship and who we are and how we want to live our life as a couple. Like, you know, our relationship goals, like, you know, so, intimacy and communication and, you know, what else is over here? I mean, it was just all that
so you're
stuff.
going back to the 7 core values for strong relationships that I found. Too.
But I didn't think when I first thought about that, I wasn't thinking in terms of just us. It's not that it's just, but I didn't think in terms of us. I was thinking in terms of us, our lives, and like, you know, our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, if you will, and our financial health, like the big picture, our whole lives. But I actually like your take on it better because now after I was reading through what you pulled up to talk about, it makes more sense for us as a couple to focus on our relationship and then zoom out from there.
Okay.
Right. So it's like sometimes you go from the big picture and kind of go, you know, narrow down or zoom click into it or whatever, click down, if you will. So, but I think starting from us as individuals, then looking at our relationship, and then kind of making those bigger and bigger circles, right? So it's you, it's me, it's us, it's our life.
So the core of how we connect, first of all, right, starting there,
is you and me.
So that goes back to those 7 core values that I found for strong relationships, which start with communication, trust, respect, loyalty, appreciation, forgiveness, and openness.
Yeah. And I think from those, like that should be the foundation. Cause I wasn't thinking, I wasn't thinking really granularly enough.
Yeah. I guess.
And I think that's more important because for us in my view, those priorities for a relationship should be where you begin. Right, those should be what you set the foundation for other bigger goals.
Building blocks.
Yes.
Yeah, because if we don't do that, then how are we going to? We don't have effective communication, for example. How are we going to talk effectively about
anything
and align on our financial health or
right? You need trust. You need the loyalty. You need the communication. You need the intimacy. You need to be able to be vulnerable and get triggered without feeling like ashamed. Right? You need to have that trust.
Well, that's part of the communication piece, right? Open and honest, listening without judgment, and listening to understand and not defend your position, right? And we've talked about that in prior podcasts before, but because we know we've talked about triggers several times, and when you come from a place of being triggered, then you're trying to defend or you're trying to deflect, and those are all things that will break down communication.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially when it comes to finances, I think for me, that's probably the most triggering area. Is that?
We've had a hard time communicating about finances.
Yeah.
Right? Because But it's not because of finances, because of how we communicate.
Exactly.
That's
it has
the
everything to
difference.
do with how we communicate. Because I think what happens is I go into a part, you go into a part, and then nobody's self is really talking, right? The part of you that, like I try to explain my view, and you're getting anxious and you're getting upset and you're getting, like, I could feel it. I could feel as soon as you go down into that part. And then I'm in the part, and I'm like, okay, so we have to kind of pull back and reconvene and think, okay, how are we going to talk about this without being triggered? What is triggering me? What's triggering you? Right. And so I think the most, like, going through these core values in the relationship, the question ends up being, what are your priorities for yourself? And what are our priorities for our life right now? Like, those are the two questions I think couples would focus on when they are in a relationship. Like, in general, you want to kind of always look at that.
And I think we're pretty well aligned, right? If you talk about physical health,
Yeah.
we are aligned on our goals there, right? As far as being able to have, as Peter Attia would say, a health span, right? So we're not just going to live a long time. We're going to live a long time, but also be healthy and be functional and be able to walk and exercise and do other things well into our, whatever that is, 80s, 90s and beyond, right? So I think we're aligned there.
Yeah, we are aligned. And I think we're definitely aligned, and you could be aligned. Here's what I was really thought was interesting, and this is kind of really digging deep, right? So we are aligned in our goals. We both feel physical health is a priority. However, the way you go about attaining that is very different than the way I go about attaining that in many ways, or thinking about it. So I have a very different view for me, what works for me, what keeps me physically healthy, and what works for you and keeps you physically healthy. I think that's where we kind of veer off in different directions. And I find myself trying to push my sort of the way I operate from that perspective on you, because I don't feel like yours is working. And that's my judgment. And that's where the judgment piece comes in. So let's be real. All these ideas about judgment free and all that, it's all on the margin. I mean, we all do the best we can, but sometimes I feel like, my part is coming through, like the way I grew up, right? And the way you grew up and your family. We just talked about that this morning, and how everybody kind of talks about health issues in your family. Nobody talks about that. As a matter
More
of fact,
negatively, though, it's not to say, hey, I ran 10 miles yesterday and I lifted weights. Like, you might talk about the positive things you do.
Yes.
My family would focus on negative. I'm having diarrhea, or
Yeah. It's really embarrassing stuff.
I need dentures, or
Right.
or I'm having a lot of
Right.
stomach issues or whatever, or I'm depressed, right?
Yeah.
They would be more talking about the negative aspects, where you focus on talking about the positive aspects.
And it's interesting, the family culture, when you look at subcultures of families and how things work. My culture, my subculture, that was weakness. When you talked about, a pain or something health going on that you complained about it and perseverated over, you got made fun of. It was a sign of weakness. And everybody was like, buck up, buttercup. Put your big girl panties on and let's go. Like, there was no, you didn't talk about it. So it's so interesting to me. Like, I have to stop myself from, like, oh my God, can you just, I know you're having a legitimate problem, but it's not what I'm used to. And when I have a problem, I think, how do I make this better? How do I make it stronger? What can I do to get better? And I focus wholly on being in excellent health. I try to heal myself from my mind into my body, and in every other way. Like, all medicine has its place, but I start with healing myself from here, and then I'll go to a holistic approach. And then if I have to, I'll go to the doctor. But, like, I don't do it in that order. So I do it in that order, not.
But this is the beauty of a committed relationship with somebody, or it can be a friendship. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship like we have, but is that you can glean something from somebody else, right?
Yes.
So that's a positive aspect of you that I didn't associate with in much of my life before I met you. So there's nothing wrong with the fact that you approach it differently at all. It doesn't mean we're misaligned.
No. Yeah.
On our priorities. It's like you said, how we go about it. But I can And I have gained something from it, right? In terms of the supplements I take, the exercises I do. And sometimes you want to go for a walk, and that motivates me to go for a walk that I might not otherwise take, right?
Right.
So sometimes you're pulling me along, sometimes I'm pulling you along, depending on what it is. So there's a benefit in that, as long as we're not forcing somebody to do something the other doesn't want to do, which has not been the case.
Yeah.
We are generally helping nudge each other a little bit in a positive direction, which I don't think there's anything wrong with.
No, it's not. I think just there is a little bit of a downside. I mean, my family, you ignored stuff, right? You put your head in the sand with a lot of things, and money was one of them. That's where I got my money issues with. But I think for health-wise, I mean, I know I have family members that, plow through things and don't, I'm fine. Meanwhile, they got a freaking limb hanging off or something, or they're not fine, or they do things that are really detrimental to their health.
Right.
And they just keep pushing through. And, there's certain things can eventually kill you. So you have to, that's the extreme side. And that's what, being in that setting as a child can create those extreme ends of that spectrum when it comes to your health and physical health and well-being. So, yeah, I just think we have to be careful. Like, I gleaned a lot reflecting on this podcast, which is why I love doing these podcasts. I mean, honestly, people watching us is awesome. I mean, I hope that enough people, we get a bigger audience and enough people can listen to this, because I love doing these things. Like, if nobody watched us, I mean, I get more from it just talking about it. And this is our time together. So this is precious for me. Yeah. Like, we don't get this all week long. Like, this is our focused time together, where we have no phones, no work, nobody's texting, nobody's complaining about anything. We're just focused on talking about one thing, and this is so nice. So, if anything, I think that's one of the best things that come out of these things, as part of prioritizing as a couple. I think doing this podcast was one of the best decisions, next to getting married and buying this house.
All right. That's fantastic. Yeah, we're already coming up on 8 months, I guess, doing this. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how fast time has gone. So, yeah, I think this is good stuff. I don't know if we want to dig a little bit more into the core values that we were talking about before, just to make sure people kind of true back to what those core values stand for. I think we've talked a lot about communication.
Yeah.
Then trust is the second one, being honest, being reliable, and consistent. I think authentic too.
Yeah.
Right. If you're coming to the relationship, coming to the table as somebody that you truly aren't, right, then it's going to be hard for the person to trust you. And I think one of the most important things to me, and we talk about this at work too, is psychological safety, right? That I can tell you something, right? And going back to money, I can bring up the subject of money. You're not going to fly off the handle and question the place that I'm coming from in a way that creates an argument, right? So that, and I don't think we grew up in households where we felt we had psychological safety, that it was okay to speak our truth or how we felt without judgment or repercussion. Yeah,
and that absolutely, we didn't. I didn't anyway.
So we couldn't trust our caregivers fully. No.
Right. So it took a while to really be able to tell you, I think what happens is couples don't tell the other one how they're feeling about something that the other person's doing.
Right.
And that's because they don't want to hurt their feelings. They don't want the confrontation. So they hold back. Next thing you know, they have a whole world inside their head that they're not sharing with their partner. And I'm not supposed to say, you share everything with your partner. A little mystery is fun. A little, you can have your own private thoughts, and that's okay.
Of course. Yeah.
But I mean, when it's about the other person and you're struggling or you're getting frustrated about something, I think it's important to be able to voice that and not be afraid that it's going to ruin your relationship, right? Because when you voice things to me or I voice things to you, it's out of love and a need to connect better or to communicate more clearly, out of curiosity, right? So if you approach it with curiosity and compassion and love, that, this is frustrating for me and I'm trying to understand what's triggering me about this, but like, I just want to tell you, like, I wonder why you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in the moment, things don't always come out that way,
Right.
like that never happens to me. How many times did I say that? But what I'm thinking actually is, I wonder what I'm doing differently that he's not doing, or what he's doing differently that I'm not doing that causes something to happen to him and not to me. That's actually what I'm thinking when I think that never happens to me. Like, I wonder why it's happening to you. But if I changed it to a question, like, I wonder what you're doing differently than I'm doing that doesn't happen. Then it sounds better than me saying, well, that never happens to me, you idiot, right? Because that kind of goes unsaid. But I mean, that could be the rest of the sentence. And that could be, like, if you said that to me, I'd be like, okay, let me finish the sentence for you. You're calling me an idiot, right? Or something like that. So I think getting back to priorities, I think it's important that we share stuff or find a way to share it in a way that doesn't cause an argument, but approaching it with curiosity. And we go back to this
Curiosity and openness.
openness,
right.
yeah, and no judgment.
And that kind of ties into the third one, respect, right? If you value your partner, right, truly hold them as a valuable person, and respect their boundaries and opinions, right? And sometimes the respecting the boundary might be, I'm not prepared to talk about that right now.
Yes.
Right. And the right now is important versus saying, I don't ever want to talk about this, right? Shutting your partner down and saying that's an off-limit subject.
Yes.
Right. That feels like what, right? What's going on? That it's off limits, right?
Yeah.
What like that? Because if you really care about your partner, you want to know, like, why is that so traumatic?
Yeah, you can't close out a big part of that.
Right?
I mean, it's
if you're not ready
frustrating.
to today, fine. Let me know when you feel you're ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important too. And I mean, to have your partner feel like there's one subject that's completely off limits. You're like, okay, that doesn't feel good. I mean, it's not that you, like, again, you don't have to talk about everything, but I mean, certain things that if they're important to your partner, we need to figure out how to make that work. And talk about it and where you feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, then you have to say, I don't feel safe talking about this.
Yeah.
And then maybe your partner can say, well, how can I make you feel safe? Or what do you need to feel safe?
That's the trust part. Now you're going back to trust.
And that's critical. I mean, like, I may not feel safe talking about money because I want to stay over here in this lane where money is okay for me. Like, I feel like I don't want to look at that. Because that's scary. I don't feel safe. I feel like that's going to make me go over the edge. So I'm going to stay in my lane with money and know, like, okay, I'm abundant. I'm this. I'm going to stay with these thoughts. But reality is, certain things need to be fixed.
Or you just tell your partner, just like if your partner's walking faster than you, which I do sometimes, like, hey, slow down so I can catch up to you, right? So, and this is something I have to be aware of at work. I get coached around this, that I go so fast, I leave people behind. They're not following what I'm talking about or where I'm going.
Yeah.
Right. And I've done that with you, and I can do that. Right. So sometimes it's a matter of saying to your partner, like, I want to go where you're going, but not at the speed at which you're going. I need you to slow down so that I can be with you on this, right?
Yeah.
And it may mean we can only talk about one thing today. I've got a list of 10 things I want to talk about with you in the next hour, but that's not going to work for most people.
Right.
Some people digest things one at a time.
Yeah.
And so you just need to say, I can only work on one of these things today. Which one is the most important to you?
Right. And the other day we were having that conversation, and that's why I kind of was like, I'm like, you have to stop, because I can only do one thing, but you're like, like you're like, talked about 10 different things.
I can easily do that.
And and you're like, I don't understand. And you're looking at me like, why are you getting overwhelmed? Because I don't know. Again, I don't know what to do first. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to do this, after this, after this, after this. Like, and then you threw it back at me saying, well, manage your time better.
And I'm like, well, you can do it all at once.
Right. Yeah, I cannot. So,
So that's good.
And neither can you.
There's your boundary, right?
Yes.
So you announced your boundary.
Yes.
The other one too is loyalty, right? And so I found this interesting. I never thought about loyalty to a partner as a core value. I hear people at work talk about loyalty, right? But I never thought about loyalty to a spouse. But that's true too, I guess, in the sense of have their back, right?
Yes.
have their back.
Yeah, not so much in the sense of obviously fidelity is critical.
Right.
I mean, that kind of goes unsaid. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it for us it goes unsaid.
Yeah,
I mean, I know it automatically. Yeah,
right. But this is
but have my back. Yeah,
like
in,
your
in
family,
all situations.
right? If your family was making fun of you at the Thanksgiving dinner table, I don't join in with them. Right? That would be disloyal.
Well, you don't join in with them, but you could also help me defend, stand up for me.
Right.
Knowing that this is like something, all of a sudden I might have retreated into my 5-year-old self.
Right.
Or my 11-year-old self.
And not to be a tangent, I'd love you to get to a point and just say to your family members, I don't allow people to talk to me that way.
Obviously.
And then I stand up for you alongside that. But
of course. But that's not always going to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I can imagine, like now I've done it. So, I mean, nobody, I won't tolerate it and I'll end the conversation or I'll get up and walk out. I don't care.
Well, I did that once, right, to one of your family members. It was,
yeah.
I said, then fine, I don't need to work with you on this. And I walked out the door.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes you
have to walk away.
Walk away. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean,
but I have to have your back. I can't sit there silently or join in, which is worse. That's disloyal. And that's kind of an example of that. I don't know if you have another one, but.
Well, see, the thing is, sometimes with me, I overstep my bounds trying to have your back. Like I'll have your back and you may not want me to have your back. Right. So the other day you were on the phone and that person was getting very upset because you said something that, by the way, was very upsetting. But we'll talk about that later.
Maybe I'm not aware.
You're not. I don't think you were.
I'm not tracking what you
and
just...
I realized you were not aware because
we'll talk about that off camera.
So, but what I stepped in and I was trying to sort of smooth it over, and then all of a sudden I heard somebody else talking in the background, and I realized, okay.
Oh yeah.
So, I said, okay, I'm backing off, and then you were like, I didn't realize you would jump in, but I heard what you said. And then I was trying to just smooth things over and like make it clear, but the situation had already lost control. We got out of control.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but that's where I overdo that. Like my family is like, I grew up in a family where no matter what, you had your family's back. Like, and you always protected them. You always stood up for them, whether they felt they needed it or not, right? Yeah. That happened a lot, especially amongst some of my siblings. So that's something that I have to be careful of because I will get upset about something that's happening to you and you're not even upset about it. And I'm furious. Like, how does this happen? Right? So I'm like the extreme in that case. And again, understanding where your partner is coming from is crucial. This way you'll know why they behave the way they do, and they're not doing something detrimental. They're trying to protect you. Their protective part jumps in, and then all of a sudden they're protecting their partner, your partner, and then you're like overprotecting.
So another core value or perhaps a priority in the relationship is showing appreciation for each other, gratitude, not taking each other for granted, thanking each other for the little things, right? For making dinner or cleaning the house or helping with each other's children or...
I'm not that good at that.
Or
that's not a strength. I have to work on that.
Or being so beautiful. Or
Thank you.
The other one is number 6 on the core value list is forgiveness, not holding on to anger, and making sure we prioritize the relationship over mistakes and issues, right? And saying at the base, do we want this relationship right at the end of the day? And I think we came to that place a few weeks ago. I remember saying to you, is the relationship important enough to move past this and talk about this, right? Because you can get hung up in what's going on, and that becomes a priority as the issue, right? Or the mistake becomes a priority.
You get stuck.
Instead of realizing the priority is the success in the bond that we have and the relationship we have, there's something that was a bump that the relationship is going over, but the relationship is still the most important thing.
Yeah, and you can get over those bumps. I mean, sometimes they feel like mountains and you got to climb them, but it is what it is. That's part of life, right?
We keep the relationship first.
Yeah.
And finally, in the core value list, number 7 is openness. And we've been talking about openness, sharing our thoughts, feelings, and experience, and listening to each other's ideas, needs and feelings, right? And be able to express those. So all these things are interconnected, right? Because communication skills come into play. If you're going to listen to each other's needs, ideas, and feelings, you have to do so without judgment and defending, right? Well, when you feel that way, it makes me do this. No, that's not the time to have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
If your partner's trying to say, I feel, just like yesterday or 2 days ago when we were talking about finances and budgeting, I said, sometimes I just need you to hear me that this feels, just trying to make some of these things work,
right,
feels hard. And I just need to be able to tell you it feels hard without you saying it's my fault or I need to do more or I'm not looking for that in that moment.
Right.
I just want to be able to say it feels hard.
Yeah.
And I want you to hear me.
Yeah.
And that's really it.
And like I said, I knew intellectually that's what you needed, but the empath in me was absorbing all of your emotions. And that's where I need like the openness and boundaries are side by side. Mm-hmm. You can't have openness without boundaries. You know what I mean? Like that's to me are like two things that work together and have to work together. So you were open, you wanted to have an open, honest conversation about how you felt, where I needed to create a boundary with my emotions so that I didn't absorb all of yours and then start feeling bad about, because that's automatically what I'll do. Oh, this is my fault. And that's the road I go down.
I wasn't looking to blame. I don't need to balance that equation and say, this is hard. I need a sacrifice over here or someone to tell me they're going to fix it, right? Because I think you do gravitate toward, how do I fix this? I hear this with your child a lot. Well, there's something, they're going through an emotional hard time. How do I fix that for them? Or how do I help them find happiness or whatever?
Yeah, and you can't take away your kids' mistakes. You can't take away their failures and you can't take away their mistakes. They're the most important thing they're ever going to have in life are their mistakes and their failures. The most important thing that they will have, that anybody has in life, are their mistakes and their own failures. Because without them, you can't learn and you can't move forward. Mm-hmm. So I think knowing that the last thing you want to do is take away someone's mistakes or failures, is knowing that you're showing them love and you support them and you know that you have the confidence in them that they can do this. They can get over this. They can fix their own mistakes. They can learn from their mistakes, and then they'll find the confidence. And when they get past that, then they'll be so much better place.
You move more from a fixer role to a supportive role. We talked about that very early on. We said, what is the role of parents?
That's a super hard thing to do.
Are we fixer, are we enabler, or supporter, right? Because you can be an enabler too.
Yeah. Yeah. If you try to fix, then you are enabling. Those are the same things, kind of. I mean, I had a parent tell me one time I just met with a couple weeks ago, and she said, I just want to take it and fix it because I don't have time.
Right.
Well, and I said, that's
people do that at work. People that manage inadequate leaders and managers take things on and fix them because they don't trust their people and they don't want to take the time to show them or allow them to make a mistake and help them work through the resolution.
Yeah. I mean, I said, so look, if your priority for your child, I mean, she had just said the priority for my child is confidence and self-esteem. So
that's great.
If you want your child to build confidence, self-esteem, how are they going to do that? If number one, you fix their problems and their failures, and number two, then makes them think that, I don't feel like I can. If my mother doesn't even feel like I can fix this, then how am I going to feel like I can fix this?
Well, the child is not going to develop their own innate
because the parent doesn't even believe in them.
Right. But they need to develop their own power.
Right. I mean, the parent can be like, I believe you. I know you can do this. But then they fix it. So that's a conflicting thing you're doing. It's a behavior.
Right.
So as a couple, if you try to fix my mistakes, I'm not going to learn how to fix my own mistakes. And I'm not going to gain the confidence that I can do it. And while I believe in you, you're my biggest cheerleader. If you fix it, that tells me you don't believe that I can fix it.
Right.
So, and that goes, so it's not just in parenting, it's in life, it's in leadership, it's everywhere, and it's in a successful relationship. Yeah.
So to recap for everyone, I think we kind of went in a little bit different direction than we originally thought about. We thought about setting priorities as a couple around financial health, spiritual health, mental health, and physical health, right? But then we realized if we don't prioritize the relationship and the core values that keep a relationship strong,
right,
then the other stuff isn't going to manifest.
Correct. It'll be really, you can't, I don't see how you can set priorities for yourselves as a couple in life, like financial priorities and any other priority you have, like physical health, mental health, if you don't work on your, as a couple, like if you don't work on the core
of the relationship,
core values of your relationship, honesty and
I'll go through the list one more time. Here's the 7 core values for strong relationships, and we'll share the link in the notes. Communication, trust, respect, loyalty, appreciation, forgiveness, and openness.
Yeah, super important.
Super important. So we work on this every day, every week. The podcast is how we kind of work it out in the camera, but I think we do 365 days a year work on all these things.
Yeah.
And we're practicing. We don't have anything perfected.
No, everything's a practice. I mean, let's face it.
And we fall down and we get back up.
Yeah.
And when we fall down, we learn why we fell down, and we try to get that much better each time. Try to learn, keep learning.
That's all you can do, yeah.
And I always say that to the people that work in my team is, if you've made a mistake, I just need you to tell me what happened. What did you learn from that experience, and what will you do differently as a result of what you learned? But I think that's true within the context of relationship too, right? If we have a blow up or an argument or whatever, okay, well, what happened? What did we learn from it, and what will we do differently as a result of what we learned? Yeah,
I think that's those 3 things are good in any situation when it comes to
your kids, parenting,
leadership, everything. Yeah, especially your kids. I mean, go to your room and think about it is not going to work. No, that doesn't help. The kid doesn't learn anything except that you don't you're afraid of their emotions. That's
everything, the whole process of life, growth, life, whether you're in a relationship or you're a kid or you're a parent or you're a worker or you're a leader, is learning, right? Yeah. And I'm learning how to be a better leader, right? And someone else might be learning how to be a better employee, right? So there's all these different aspects. But again, truing back to these core values, right? If we can connect there and have that true bond and connection around those values, everything else then will flow. We'll find the alignment that we need.
Yeah.
And we may not always be aligned, but then being able to talk about it is still connection, right?
That's right.
Right? Connection and alignment aren't always the same thing.
No.
Right? We may be connected in a way that we can talk to each other honestly. Yeah. We not always be aligned on something.
Yeah, I call it synced up. You can't always be synced up all the time. It's not going to happen. I mean, you're 2 different individuals. Everybody thinks differently. Yeah. You approach things differently. You have your way. I have my way.
Yeah.
And that works for you.
We're unique individual people.
Right.
You know, we don't marry or suggest that people should marry or get in a committed relationship to be the same person. That's actually not effective. Going back to what we talked about at the onset of this, is that you said we're both aligned around the idea of physical health, but we approach it differently.
Very much.
But we may kind of each of us kind of lean into each other's way of doing it. And so because we're different, that has shaped us in ways that I couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. Is the differences are very impactful into how we learn. And you've exposed me to things I had never thought of before. So that's the impact piece. If we were the same person and not have challenged each other for the last 16 years, then there would be no growth. So thank you for all that.
Together or individually. Yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
All right. So if you like this podcast, please encourage you to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave comments as well. And feel free to visit our Instagram page at Personal Transformation EXP. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great week.